Hi, my name is Tiffany Bova. Welcome to IIL's Leadership Conference. I'm here to talk to you about the Great Reset and growth being a thinking game. Thank you for spending time with us here today. You know, I always like to say we can make more money, but we can't make more time. So taking time out of your day to continuing your learning journey is absolutely incredible. So thank you. So let's begin. What got us here? What got us to this conversation of having to even think about a great reset? COVID has changed everything. The way we work, the way we conduct commerce, the way we educate our kids and do healthcare, so much has changed. We're now selling from our kitchens and having leadership conferences from our dining room tables. But more importantly, IT has really had to step up. They've had to accelerate this digital transformation that has been talked about for so long. For me, the term digital transformation has a ton of meanings. But the easiest thing for me to say is digital is technology and transformation is the people and process side of the business. Those three things, the way we work, the way we live, and the way we now engage and connect is forever changed. What is powering this? This digital imperative. We've now become what I call super consumers. Our consumer life is bleeding into everything we do from a work perspective. Our expectations, are things in an app? Can we order them immediately? Can we communicate and chat quickly via social media? Is it a bot? Is it a human? I don't know. Do I care? I'm just looking for service. All of those things have forever changed. But look, this digital imperative is nothing new and it's not going to go away anytime soon. How we leverage each of these things, that's what's important. It's about our people and our employees. It's about our systems and our technology. It's about how we engage and connect with customers and our greater shareholder community, vendors, etc. So it's super important that you think about this in a holistic way, not just as a singular, inside-out view. What is it that customers need from you going forward? That's really where the digital imperative has a huge opportunity to impact your business in 2021 and really beyond. So now let's talk about navigating this growth dilemma. If you're in an industry that is experiencing exponential growth because of the pandemic, that's fantastic. How do you capitalize that, learn from it, and accelerate going further into the future? If you've noticed a little bit of what I call a growth stall, where what was happening pre-pandemic has gotten more difficult for you to achieve, or you were already in a growth stall coming into the pandemic and things have gotten really tough for you. Whatever case it is, know that growth will continue to be hard. And it's really hard from a repeatable and consistency standpoint, regardless of the pandemic. So there are things that you can be focused on now in order to prepare yourself. And that's really where growth is a thinking game shows itself. This image on the left has everything to do with my book, Growth IQ. I identified 10 paths to growth. The first one is really important. And the way that you have to set yourself up for success is you have to begin with a beginner's mind. Start with a little bit of space in your day-to-day thinking. To be creative, consider the art of the possible. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. However you want to frame it, know that this is really about opening up yourself to the possibilities of what the future can hold. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. I can tell you I learned this lesson the hard way. When I used to be an executive running teams and running global sales, marketing, and service organizations, I used to be faced with challenges and I would try to solve them the same way that had always worked for me in the past. And then when I was an analyst for almost a decade, consulting and advising small, medium, and some of the largest tech companies in the world, I really learned the power of a beginner's mind. If I knew the answer walking in, I maybe wasn't even listening correctly to the question. The moment I shifted that and listened to the question and then paused and reflected on the context of the market and the things that were going on, would it then force me to answer that question differently? Lo and behold, it did. I really learned then that the beginner's mind is a powerful starting point for anything that you're planning on doing when it comes to strategy and change management in your business. Look, this Black Swan event has cracked open all of our bad habits. It's shown us the lack of investments we've made on a technology side, maybe on the people process side, but we were holding on to the way things had worked historically for too long. It was time for us to really reimagine what this future could look like. I don't like to say the new normal. I actually like to say the next future, because I don't want to go back to the way that it used to be. I want us to learn from this and really find our way to the middle of what is possible. Where we came from should teach us all the things that we needed to change. Where we are today might help us realize how we can scale the things we're doing now for the future of not only our employees and our shareholders, but our business at large. So find a common ground, uncover what we could learn and do differently, and then double down on things that have been working today based on what your customers and employees want from you. Either way, I'm super excited about where I think the markets are going. So that is the first one, having a beginner's mind. The second one is employee first and empowering everyone. I used to often say it's customer centricity. I've even said it on a prior IIL event, that customer centricity was what it was all about. But what was missing from that comment is it needs to be employee first and customer centric. You have to make sure that your employees are taken care of. Why? Because the fastest way to get your customers to love your brand is to get employees to love their job. If your employees love their job, they show up with a better attitude. They're willing to take on tough tasks. They're actually willing to be more innovative, because even if they fail, they know that the company is behind them in using that as a learning opportunity. You're giving them the tools they need to serve customers in the right channels and in the right ways. You're developing products and using, UX and design thinking as a way to actually drive change. You're using project management and change management to make sure that employees are given the right processes to do the jobs correctly. Ultimately, I'm going to oversimplify here, but companies do two things. They make stuff and they sell stuff. And so don't overcomplicate what happens in your business because you're solely focused on what happens within the four walls of your company. Make sure you balance employee and customer. Now, why is that important? Because employee productivity is top of mind. Health and well-being, safety, getting people back to work, back to the office in a safe manner. When, how, what is time for you to put potentially your sales teams and your service teams back out into the field? You have to build this digital first mindset to make sure that your employees have what they need, but understand how their role plays an important part in the growth of your business and the satisfaction of your customers. So rethinking productivity also has to do with what are the metrics in which you use to manage your people? Are they the right ones? If they're the same ones they were pre-March 2020, have you done yourself a disservice? Do you have people focused on the wrong things? Are you so solely focused on the productivity of what they do day to day for you that you may be missing the signals and signs of the fact that they're overloaded and overburdened and burnt out? Give them the space, give them the time to show up with their best selves so that they can serve your customers better. Now, within this time, we've done a bunch of research around what does the future of work look like. Lo and behold, many people who were not working from home and are now working from home may decide that's the way they want to keep it for all kinds of reasons. Could be flexibility, could be time on the road. I'm doing this for you from Los Angeles, California, which is probably one of the worst traffic states in the country. So not getting on the road and driving to the office and spending an hour or two each day, I'd rather take that time back to do what I was hired to do. But during this time also, we have learned that the soft skills, the soft stuff, is really important. And so take this time for your employees to understand what are the new skills they want to learn and how do you deliver that to them in a way that's easy. Learning management platforms, using organizations like IIL, whatever it might be. Ultimately, this is about continuing your learning journey, continuing to invest in your people through continue education. And so the most important skills over the next 6 months are the following: adaptability, collaboration, resilience, creativity. Now, how do you teach it? How do you measure it? How do you hire for it? That's where you really need to connect with your HR, your recruitment teams, your leaders, and understand what is the culture today? How is it different than it used to be? What are the skills we're going to need for tomorrow? That's where you have to make investments. Don't just make investments on the things that are easy to measure and manage. Make sure you're also doing it on these soft skills. Now, the experience equation will drive growth. That is important. And so thinking about this employee equation, I just recently did some research with Forbes and Salesforce, and we found that companies that are really strong on employee experience, deliver compelling customer experience, have a 1.8x growth rate than those that don't. There was a virtuous cycle that one built upon the other. So if you're squarely focused on the customer and you forget your employees, it will not work. If you only focus on your employees and you're not focused on your customers, you have a little bit better of a chance. But when you focus on both, it is a huge accelerant for your business. Now, when we talked to executives during this research and said, why do you think you're unable to deliver compelling experiences? Executives said it was employees. Employees said it was executives. So there's a big gap between what you expect to have done, what the customers expect, what your employees expect, and what you want to do for a business. So ultimately, these two things together are so powerful that you have to make sure you're focusing on both. So when I have conversations with customers about customer experience or customer centricity, it's always interesting to hear and to see that they rarely bring up the employee. So my challenge to you is the next time you have a conversation about either of those topics, are they happening at the same time or are they happening in isolation? Make sure you bring those two things together. So that's the second. The third is the answer of where to focus lies with your customers. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. Maybe end of April, beginning of May, our CEO, Mark Benioff, gave us a challenge. 1 million conversations with customers. Not 1 million sales calls, not 1 million product demos, not 1 million RFP responses, 1 million conversations. What was the goal? To understand the jobs to be done for our customers. People don't want quarter-inch drills. They want quarter-inch holes. But I would actually push this a little further if you've heard this quote before from Theodore Levitt. They actually don't want either one of those things. They want a shelf hung on a wall. They want a desk built. They want to fix something in their house or at work or at a client site. Ultimately, it isn't about the drill bit or the hole. It's about the job to be done. So we went out and asked really compelling questions to uncover what is that job to be done. We launched 5 new products last year. Not all are in general release, but it was about getting people back to work safely, contact tracing, scheduling of people, either in the field or in the office. We knew that what our customers needed from us was significantly different than what they needed from us 6 months prior. We took all that information and we reshaped the company. We innovating faster than we ever have. 55,000 employees, multiple $1 billion in revenue, acting like a startup. You have to continue to push the envelope on innovation. If you're not innovating in your own product category, your customers actually feel like you have apathy towards them as a customer. That you don't want to invest in making their experience with you better, both from a selling, marketing perspective and service perspective, but more importantly, are you developing products they even want or need? Now, you can look at it in the Henry Ford lens, that if you ask a customer what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They never would have imagined a car. I tend to use this example when I talk about this is, if Steve Jobs had gone out and said, what do you want from us? I don't know how many people would have said a first generation iPod. But if you listen to what they said, it might have been, I want to listen to music when I run, and I run for about 90 minutes, and I run in the middle of nowhere, and I don't have radio signals, or I don't want to listen to the same CD over and over. So they don't really know that they want an iPod, but they understand the job to be done. That's what we did in those million conversations. So thinking about whether you're selling to consumers or business clients, all customers are saying they expect new products and services more frequently than they did before. So that was the third one. Let's go to the fourth. The fourth is lead with values, trust, and transparency. Now, this couldn't be more true. We've been talking about this for some time. But lo and behold, in the middle of a pandemic, people were paying attention to all kinds of things. Social injustice, healthcare issues, the entire just decimation from a pandemic standpoint on a global scale. And how brands behave during this time is telling to what kind of values and culture they actually have. So values can build or diminish revenue. What is it you stand for? Do you share that publicly? Customers are looking. Not only are your customers looking, but prospective employees are looking as well. They want to work for brands where they sort of share the values with the company they're applying to. 61% of customers have stopped buying from companies whose values didn't align with theirs. Without getting into the brands, I can tell you there are 3 or 4 that I no longer do business with, and that's okay. It's my decision as a consumer to not do business with those brands if I don't agree with what they're doing from either a social or a business or an environmental standpoint. So I try to do it as much as I can in leaning into those values. And so thinking about that from your company, what are they? Do you share them? Does everyone who works for you know what they are? Do you use them in your business in an authentic way? There's a huge crisis of trust, not only during this pandemic, during the elections, during the government, depending on where you're watching this in the world. The crisis of trust is worldwide and global, but it's intensifying. 52% of customers say they don't generally trust companies. What's scary about this is they actually trust companies more than they trust government at the moment. And so we have to make sure that we share with our customers how we use their data and their personal information and their buying habits and patterns, what we do with what we know about them. That's one simple area to understand. And how you communicate what you do with their personal data, that's part of being transparent. Transparency is, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? Let me know so I, as a consumer or a buyer or a customer or a vendor, can make an informed decision. Do I agree with what you're doing or not? Do I want to do business with you or not? We have to become more value-driven. We have to make sure we amplify trust, and we have to make sure we do it in a transparent and authentic way. Those 3 things are really tough. Even if your culture is really strong and inside the company, everybody knows those things, do your customers? Would they say that about your brand? Wow, something happened. But when it happened, they were very responsive and fixed it right away, communicated with me, made the fix, took care of anything that might have happened. And then I feel like if something happened in the future, they would have my back again. That's why trust, values, and transparency is so important. So that's the 4th one. The 5th one is experience is the new product. Now, if I were standing in front of you, this would be a much better sort of example because I could see your hands. But clients will remember the experience they have with a brand or person much longer than the price they paid. What do I mean by that? So if I were in front of you, as I said, I'd ask, how many of you have caught an Uber ride in the last 30 days? Most of the time, 80 or 90% of the hands will go up in the room. And then I'll say, how many of you remember what you paid? Most, if not all of the hands go down. Then I say, okay, how many of you remember if the car was smelly, if the driver was too talkative, if the music was too loud, or if they weren't a good driver? Everybody's hands go back up. That's the example. A fantastic dinner, the food was amazing, the service was terrible. Will you go back? The food was okay, it was good, but the service was so fantastic, you might go back. So thinking about experience as an additive to the product, know that your customers are doing the same thing. We actually have research that shows that 90% of the decision now is on the experience against product. We think by 2024 that those things will become even, that the experience will become as important as the product. So whatever it is you're selling, it might be industry leading, it might be good enough, it might be just okay. But listen, if you can wrapper that with an amazing experience, you might have a shot at not only attracting, but keeping the customers. I want you to develop more on the product. I don't want them to be just okay, but I'm trying to show that it's equally as important for you to think that if you launch the best product the world has ever seen and it's a terrible experience, no one will buy it, or they'll buy it once and they won't buy it again. And then you won't be able to sustain your business. It's not enough to engage with customers. You have to connect with them. You have to connect with them in new ways. What are the things you can do to connect with your customers? Is it a Zoom call? Is it instead of sending a text message, you send a voice text message? Is it instead of just having a Zoom call and talking about the normal things, do you do a lunch meeting with them? Do you do a wine tasting with them and invite a sommelier? Do you get other customers, like-minded customers together to have a networking event via Zoom? Do things that are creative so that they engage with you. Do it in a personal, contextual, and predictive manner. The expectations for customer experience are constantly being raised around us, especially as super consumers are entering the B2B space and other industries with these new expectations. It's important for us to realize that once again, it's not going to go back to the way that it was. This digital first mentality, this always on instant gratification is not going to slow down. Now, I don't want you to hear me say that and just have you go, oh, like I'm already feeling burnt out. Like, will it continue to be like this? This is where you have to use technology to help you do these things at scale in a consistent fashion. So once again, it's easy for your employees to serve your customers. Those two things have to be able to be leveraging technology in new ways. 68% of customers say COVID-19 has elevated their expectations of companies' digital capabilities. 66% expect brands to understand their unique needs. And as I said, those that are focused on CX are growing faster than those who are not. But you can't do it without your employees. So that is the fifth one. So the sixth one is sales is at an inflection point. I could spend a full hour talking to you about this one, but let me hone in on what I mean. Remote and virtual selling is now the new norm. Not sure we're going to go back to consistent 100% face-to-face selling, even for outside sales reps. It's going to be this hybrid of what's the most effective way for me to connect and engage with my customer. Do I need to get in my car and drive? Do I need to get on an airplane and fly? Do I need to get on a train? What's the thing I need to do? Does it have to be face-to-face, or can I do it virtually with some engaging value and insight? Either way, the field seller who is 100% going to be face-to-face is probably a thing of the past. Maybe it will come back in a couple of years, but I think we've all learned that many can be as productive or more productive if they can get 10 meetings in a day via video than one a day because they had to drive or fly or catch a train. Now, mind you, I love seeing people, so I don't want it to be just all virtual. But make sure for your business what's the best approach to deliver those compelling experiences and allow your salespeople to do what they were hired to do, which is sell. So we've moved from being reactive to being proactive to now being predictive. And these things absolutely require technology. You can't move from one to the other with an Excel spreadsheet and Post-it note and bubble gum, or what sits in the mind of your sales teams or your marketing teams or your service teams. This has to be that everybody has access to the same level of information so you can make the right decisions today and in the future. Look for signals and patterns so you can be more predictive of what your customers may want from you in the future. This digital transformation for your sellers is showing itself in the obvious. Video is now the new normal, but also artificial intelligence and mobile apps and CRM or customer relationship management and sales prospecting tools. Are people still buying? How are they buying? They're buying more frequently, less frequently. Are more people involved in purchases? Less. The prospecting side of the business requires you to also think differently about the customers you already have, not just those you're trying to acquire. So using artificial intelligence is the way to look for those patterns and look for those signals so that you can say people who bought this also bought that. People who did this also did that with us. So you can find a commonality with other customers who look and feel the same so you can offer them those same similar services. I often use Amazon.com as an example when I talk about this. I'm not sure you know that recommendation engine drives 30% of their total revenue on Amazon.com, meaning we spend 30% more than we thought we were going to when we show up, because people who bought this also bought that. There's a lot of value in knowing that. You would have been, oh, I forgot to buy the batteries, or I didn't buy a case, or I didn't buy the connector for this or that. Ultimately, that intelligence is that predictability and looking for those patterns. How do you do that? How do you find customers in a particular industry or where they are in their evolution? They're a startup. They tend to do this over the course of the first 6 months, or they're a mid-sized business who's just acquired somebody. And we know that they always do these 3 things. So now you have another customer who's just acquired. Now you predict what they're going to do next. You start sharing value and insights. That's super, super important. It's also a huge competitive differentiator. Remember, you make stuff and you sell stuff. How do you sell and connect in a better way that shows value and insights for your customers? That's where technology really plays a role. And you need to do it in real time. It needs to be personalized. It needs to be predictive, as I just said. And you need to optimize the way that you sell. Don't just do it the way you've always done it. Learn from the data. Adjust the sales processes. Understand the buyer journey. What would you do differently because of it? Your customers want you to know them. They want you to know what they need, and they want you to add value. Those 4 things are the new currency of sales. You can't show up and go, tell me about your business. So you've spent no time doing any of that. Or tell me what you've done. And you're like, I've been doing business with you for 6 years or 10 years or 15 years. Why don't you know me? Or I don't really know what you do there. How can I help you? Showing up and asking your customers to educate you means you've not spent the time to do it. Now, there are things you can't know in advance, but that's where you have to learn how to become a master asker, asking the right questions to uncover what it is that the customer wants from you. This is where training plays a huge role, right? Training on the new skills, how to do a compelling video call, how to be a better storyteller, how to do data analysis, how to look for those patterns and signals, how to create a campaign to do something like those million conversations I just shared with you a few minutes ago. Either way, there's no question, if you're listening to this, you appreciate continuing education. So let's make sure you do it for others in your organization as well. How can you help them show up every day with the right skills to be successful on the employee experience side, but also delivering that value and insight on the customer experience side? So, what will you do differently? What will you do differently based on what I've just shared with you here today? Remember, this is about giving yourself permission to have that beginner's mind, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and try things you might not have otherwise tried. Take this opportunity to reimagine what's possible and know that you can outthink your competition if you just take a step back, understand the landscape and where you actually can make an impact. Whatever you do, be bold. Be bold. Give it a shot. We either win or we learn. It's not about failure, right? It's about learning with each iteration of the things we try. And if you're comfortable every day in what you're doing, it means you're not stretching yourself to try things that you maybe never would have tried before. So go out there, be bold, and attack everything it is that you'd like for yourself and your business. So if you'd like further inspiration or to learn more about what I've been talking about, here's some free research you can download. The State of Connected Customer is all about customers and what they're looking for from brands today in this new sort of COVID world. State of Sales is what are sales teams, high-performing sales teams, doing that others are not. And State of Marketing sort of shares what are the best channels for you to be connecting with your customers. You might be surprised to know that email is still number 1. Then you can also subscribe to my podcast, What's Next with Tiffany Bova. I'm across all the podcasting platforms. I interview some amazing people. We have some great conversations, and really that is my classroom. I learn every single time I do an interview. And then my book, Growth IQ. It's now translated in 9 languages. It's in Spanish and Portuguese, Thai, Vietnamese, Simple Chinese, Mandarin, Polish, obviously English. It's in the UK. So, if you get a chance to pick one up, I'd love to hear what you think. But it has been a pleasure spending time with you. Again, my name is Tiffany Bova. I'm the Growth and Innovation Evangelist at Salesforce, the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Growth IQ, and I appreciate you spending time with me here today.